So Don, I put out a LinkedIn post today, and I just compared some of the companies that have, in we'll call them more niches of sports. Tennis Rate at UTR, they went through an exit, a bunch of the sports cameras, and I said on the emerging league space, it's been really cool to watch the PFL in 6 years during the peak of the UFC rise up and start to compete with it. One of the co-founders of the UFC, message right away, I disagree with that. And some other people like that's wrong. And so anyway, it was just funny timing. I thought it was a funny way to intro and be like, how do you see this playing out? How's it come in 6 years? How do you feel about that and where you guys are headed?
If it wasn't for debate, if it wasn't for hoopla and memes, where would we be, right? So you've always got that on the internet. You always have to I always look at the signal, not the noise when building the company. The signal, not the noise. And so to me, to answer your question, call it with 3 signal points instead of noise points. Super proud of building the Professional Fighters League. Just think of this. In 6 years, the PFL has become the number 2 MMA company and the number 1 fastest growing sports league out of nothing. 0 employees, 0 fans, 0 fighters, 0 viewers. 6 years ago. Never in the history of sports has that happened. Where are we today? We're distributed in 170 countries with premium media companies, the same as UFC. Our viewership is 166% of MLS and 40% of UFC. Both those companies built that viewership over 30 years. We built it over 5. Our athlete roster, with buying Bellator, 30% of our fighters are top 25 ranked. That's independent rankings, Fight Matrix. The exact same 30% of UFC's roster. In terms of business, we'll do over $100 million of revenue this year, and we're paid cash media rights in 170 countries. Never happened with a sports league. So for us, that's the signal. And what's the signal say? Hey man, MMA market, 2 premium global players. This is not about us versus UFC. It's not about winning or losing. It's not about taking share. MMA, fastest growing sport, there's now a second winner joining what is clearly still the leading company, UFC.
So what's the secret sauce? If you're to do it all over again and you're reverse engineering it now 6 years, what were some of the things you did right? And even what are some of the things that you would have changed that, maybe could have gotten you there in 4 years instead of 6?
Well, nothing we could have done to got us there in 4 years. What I really was surprised by is 2 big things. And I've built a lot of companies. I've invested in 50 to 60 companies. 12 of those have exited for over $1 billion. So I know what it is to build winners. And obviously was early at AOL and was part of the team that built that to a Fortune 10 company. I've been on both sides of building big disruptive companies. So I tend not to underestimate tasks. Building a sports league is hard. And the 2 things that I underestimated was, 1, in the technology space, people root for and help new companies. They welcome them in. Not so in the sports space. Kind of back to some of the quotes you saw today in reaction to your feed. People tend to say, that won't make it. That can't work. I'll root against that. Because maybe sports is winners and losers. People like to declare things losers very early. In the technology space, people root for them to be winners. So therefore, it was hard to get people on board. Longevity is very important in sports. If you've been around 5 years, that's great. In technology, if you've accomplished the same thing in 1 year that you can in 5, you're way more of a winner. Because speed is essential. In sports, longevity is essential. So to me, the first thing was a surprise is call it the gravity against a new league. It's pulling you down. The second thing that surprised me is how long it took to convince people that the analogy of NFL, XFL didn't hold in MMA. All of us in the United States are very US focused. So we think of everything through the NFL, XFL lens. That's our lens for every single answer. And everybody thinks they're smart in sports, and that's where they go. So therefore, there can never be an MMA league because there's never going to be another football league. Well, that is true. There'll never be another football league, but that's not true in MMA because the MMA market extremely different for three reasons. If you think of student of business at all, student of sports business specifically, there's three things that are necessary to build any sports league. But until MMA, those three things were never in the favor of building a new league. One, excess supply of athletes. Two, excess demand of fans. Three, excess demand of media. Well, look at this.
Let's go.
We've now got balloons from nowhere.
We got
making a valid
balloons,
point. Making a
thumbs
valid
up.
point. So think of that as a triangle of success, building a sports league. You need supply and demand in your favor in terms of the three things that matter: fighters, fans, media. Because those are the three things that make anything go. MMA had an excess supply of top fighters. It's almost like, think about the NBA in the 70s, Julius Erving's dribbling a basketball, but he didn't have a place to play. There's only 8 NBA teams. ABA grows. Go to media, for example. 650 million fans in MMA, but only 50 events from UFC. Heck, there's 5,000 basketball games, 3,000 soccer matches. 50? So very underserved, very undermonetized. So the media companies want more MMA. They're not looking for more football. There's already 11 football packages in the NFL and another 8 football packages of D1. It's already 19 football packages. And then you go to fans for a minute. This is a global sport. Of the 650 million fans, only 20% in the US. So we tend to miss how big this sport is. So it's not niche, it's mass. It's not emerging, it's here. So 650 million fans wanted more premium MMA. It's just they've never been given more premium MMA. They've been given more single A baseball, double A baseball, not major league. So PFL came in, and we're the first to think about it differently with a sports season format, with a next-gen product, with industrial strength investors, with leaders and company builders that can execute globally to serve that audience, to serve that fan base, to serve those media companies, and to deliver for those athletes.
Supply and demand side makes a lot of sense. I never thought of it from that standpoint of especially the football and MMA comparison. I'm curious, any other leagues or sports or things that you're looking, maybe doing a nice job, maybe there's a chance for another league, maybe you're invested in other ones that you're sort of like, it's interesting. Like if I wasn't building the PFL, maybe that would be something I could see myself doing.
Well, look, rewind 10 years. When I was the managing partner of Revolution, our venture capital fund with Steve Case and Ted Leonsis, we did Sport Radar. Nobody saw that gaming and the whole infrastructure of betting was going to explode. We did the $250 million investment round of DraftKings. Right, it's now a $20 billion company. We were the first to buy an esports team before esports was called esports 8 years ago. We bought Team Liquid, now the most winning team, for $7 million. So there are things outside of, call it, a sports league that are, call it, sports technology, new sports-related segments, sports adjacencies that for a decade I've been doing. So I'm always looking, A, global, B, growth. Global and growth, global and growth. Where most people always look at teams. Those are domestic and no growth, right? The average sports team's growing 4% a year, and the average sports team has 80 to 85% of their revenue from the US market. So that's called domestic and no growth. That only works if you're a billionaire and you're in your community. But if you really want to make money, if you really want to build, if you really want to have impact, you have to be global and growth. So that's where I spend all my time.
G&G, global and growth.
I like that. I'll pick that up. Value add already here.
I like that too. Yeah. That's from more macro. Now, when you're looking at, obviously it's not just the idea, right? It's the team behind it. Now I'm sort of shifting a little bit more to your investment, thinking brain of picking winners. What does that look like for the team when you're picking, right? Sport Radar is great, but people went and executed that, right? Same with the teams and everything else you just talked about. What are some of those intangibles on there that you look for work well? And obviously I'm sure you've embodied a lot of them yourself.
Yeah, when people always think about team, I think of it in two questions. One, the actual leader of the company, and then number two, the team they put around them. If the person leading the company, like myself or Pete Murray in this case, care about one other thing in the world, that company will fail. So I didn't start PFL until I was 55. I already been very successful. I don't care about one other thing in the world for the last 7 years. I'm now 62. People say, when's the last time you played golf? When's the last time you've seen a movie? What's the last vacation you've taken? The answer is 0, 0, and 0, right? All I care about is the PFL. I live and die every day for its success. I am driven to make every investor who bet on me to be a winner, and everybody who said no to be pained. And that drives me. And I feel it just like you would at the NFL in terms of are you going to make it or not on NFL Sunday. I'm so driven. More driven today, maybe than when I was 30 years old, and I understand what drive is. So to me, when I look at the leader of a company, it is, are you going to live or die, whether that company makes it or not successfully? Is that literally the only thing in the world that matters to you? Then when I look at team, I look at the overall skill set and expertise necessary to deliver. Right? Too many people just come from one area, sports, MMA. So for PFL, for example, yes, you have to have MMA chops. Yes, you have to have sports expertise. But our head of social was the #1 employee driving social for Barstool. Our head of production, 18 Emmys, the Olympics, and Fox Sports. So you have to go down the board. Our CFO, 3-time public company, in entertainment.
Yep.
So to me, when I look at team, that's what I look at. When I look at a leader, that's 100% what matters.
Yeah, I can't think of any. I had G&G. I was trying to put someone like that. I don't have another one.
To me, it's live or die. Too many people, they're, quote, 100% in another company, but they also invest on the side. I've made 0 investments in 7 years on the side. Or they're doing a bunch of other podcasts on the side. Or they're doing a bunch of other speaking engagements on the side. I respectfully tell people for 7 years, I'm not doing one thing. This is all I'm doing. And so when people are doing a bunch of other things who are also trying to build a company, they're not all in. They're not living or dying for that company. So those are the kind of things I look for.
Now, all right, fast forward a little bit. You're living and dying by this. We're 6-7 years in. What's that vision look like? Where do you want to take this? Where's where you're at least like, I can go golf now. I can go to a movie because I've gotten it to where at least where, I'm sure, again, just the human mind, there's going to be the next thing, but like at least what's somewhat of that baseline level.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I started the company, my vision was we're going to be the #2 company in MMA because that's valuable. Back to originally what I said a few minutes ago, there'll be 2, maybe 3 big winners because there's 8 soccer leagues. So when I sat down and studied soccer, that industry and that business maps MMA very well in 2 respects. The soccer fans are 80% outside the U.S., and the soccer revenue is 50% outside the U.S. Exact same for MMA. 50% of the revenue, 80% of the fans. So therefore, there might not be 8 MMA leagues because soccer is the #1 sport in the world, but there could be 2 or 3. So UFC is the first winner, but they won't be the only winner. So my goal, build a valuable #2. With the acquisition of Bellator and the achievement of those metrics that I outlined to you, we won that. January 2024, first time we win. We won first goal. We're the clear #2 on every single metric anybody could name. And #3 is not close. So what will we win? That's TBD. We've passed go. But what will we win? We still have work to do to fully monetize the #2 position. But we set a new goal. Next 5 to 6 years, how can we be a co-leader? Same goal is not how do we beat UFC, not how do we take share from UFC, how do we be a co-leader? They're currently worth about $10 billion. They're going to go to $20 billion of worth over the next 5 to 6 years. They're going to grow too. They're going to do very well too. Okay, well, we're just worth $1 billion. We're worth 1/10 of them. How can I get to 10 billion and be a co-leader in viewership, same viewership, co-leader in terms of mind share, have people think about us the same on that premium level? That's what's possible in the next 5 or 6 years. So that's the goal that we focus on now that we've got that first step of success in the first 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, basically want to get to the Coke, Pepsi level, McDonald's, Wendy's. Like that's how you're saying it.
Yeah. Remember, half of our fans watch UFC, but half are new to sport. Half are not MMA fans yet. They watch basketball. They watch the Premier League, but they come to PFL for 2 reasons. Our sports season format is what they're used to watching. It has a beginning, middle, and end. Regular season, playoffs, championship. #2, we make it easy to understand. Imagine watching football without the yellow line of first down. Imagine watching baseball without the strike zone or the pitch speed. That's how I grew up. Those didn't exist. Well, that was not a very easy to understand product. You had to be a diehard. Well, that's MMA. But we now give you kick speed. We now give you punch impact. We now give you real-time AI scoring, who's winning in the first round. We give you real-time odds. So now if you're new to MMA, you can say, huh, I understand what's going on. Hey, this is a cool sport. So that's why about half of our audience is new to MMA. So yes, we want to be the co-leader, but this is also about growing the sport globally and bringing in sport fans to MMA.
I want to go back on something you just said. You were talking about studying soccer before you started the PFL. Market research. People, a lot of people that listen to these they have an idea, or they're looking in, or the reason they listen to these is because they're looking for something. Again, I don't know the initial basis of where the idea came from, but how do you go about going, okay, this seems interesting, this is something I like, now let's study and really understand the opportunity, to then, all right, like let's go.
Andrew, I think this would be super illustrative for your viewers, and I like to demystify things. I think it tries to make things too complicated, and ever since I was like 18 years old, I've always tried to study, hey, what are they doing so I can do it? I like doing that, so I can maybe help and demystify things here. So one, I'm minding my own business running the Revolution funds the day UFC sells. I'd seen 0 MMA fights ever. And I put out all my work aside, and I go, that's pretty interesting. I had no idea this business was that big. I had no idea this market's that big. And I cancel all my meetings, and I read everything for like 6-7 hours that I could find. And I call my wife at 8 o'clock that night. I'm still at the office. And I say, I'm going to start a new MMA company. And she goes, hey, I support you. Only 2 problems. 1, you have a job. 2, you don't watch any MMA. And I go, doesn't matter. I learned 3 things today that tell me the dynamics are so huge. 450 million fans, most underserved, undermonetized, don't have to beat them to win. That's all true 7 years later. But nobody else really saw that except for perhaps Endeavor, which bought UFC. Now, the question is, how are you going to execute against that? So insight 1 is always read, always be curious, always look for some simple aha, very clear mega trends of market openings. But then insight number 2 is don't be scared about what you don't know, and don't be intimidated when a bunch of people say you don't know anything. So even my now good friend Ariel Helwani for a year said, this guy doesn't know MMA. This guy's an interloper. This sports season format idea is stupid. And everybody said this won't work. The amount of crap we took was enormous because we're outsiders. We know nothing. We don't understand the sport. Don't let anybody dissuade you if you're starting a company or building a company. Study and learn, but also don't be a prisoner to the existing thinking. So I'm not a prisoner to inside MMA. Why has PFL been so successful? Because we're not a prisoner to the way things have always been done. So we pay fighters better. We treat fighters better. We have a more interesting product. We are more tech savvy and forward looking. We're much more global and expansive. We borrow from esports. We borrow from soccer. We borrow from the NBA. So we are students and executors of sport and media. We're not prisoners or insiders of MMA, despite now having deep expertise there. So that would be my other and second candid advice to everybody who wants to start or wants to build a company.
It's good advice. I got to pull us back now. I had to go back and touch on that. But from a technology lens now, a lot of cool things you guys are doing. A lot of people talk about how, like Mark Lazary talks about this, sports isn't just sports teams and leagues now. They're media and entertainment and technology centers. How are you seeing that as you're building it? I know you have like smart cages and AI and all this different cool stuff. How are you balancing that? Do you really view it as a sports league, or do you view it as something different in your eyes? Is it an entertainment platform? Is it a tech platform, media, betting?
Yeah, it all starts with the product. Every company I've been involved with is a consumer company, and consumers use products. So from the very beginning of AOL, we knew we were a consumer product company, not a technology company. DraftKings is a consumer product company, not a technology company. The best companies make technology invisible, and they use technology to make the product more accessible, more interesting, more engaging for consumers. So to me, technology is a tool. Technology is an enabler, but the more the technology is invisible and the more it's just used to make the product better in whatever way better drives viewership and engagement and revenue. Because there's only three things that matter: viewership, engagement, and revenue. That's what the goals are. So when we look at technology, or when we look at partners who are providing us new solutions or new ideas, I say, what's it going to do for viewership, engagement, or revenue?
Curious, a lot of people ask this about others in the space. What's your, again, it's always different, but what's your average day look like? Like, how do you block it? How do you manage it? How do you tackle it to make sure it's, well running and optimized?
Wow. Super interesting question. I would say I'll tell you maybe the two ways my day is very different from, call it, most days. Similar in many days, and I'll maybe name those, but the two ways is most different. My day is very non-linear. Most company leaders schedule a lot of meetings and do very similar things on a weekly basis. That is not my day. Very non-linear. I might work on media rights a lot. I might not work on them at all. I might work on capital raise a lot. I might not work on it at all. My day is driven by where can I create the most value for the company. And that changes. And that changes reasonably dramatically. But that's the lens, and therefore it's very nonlinear. Could have 0 meetings. I could have 6 Zooms. So very nonlinear day, number one. Number two, divide and conquer. So Pete Murray and I try never to be on the same call or in the same place at the same time. The world is too big, our opportunities are too plenty, and our time is too scarce. So I see a lot of people double or triple up all the time. I don't want to be on a meeting or a call that Pete's on. I trust him. Same to me. So Pete's in Paris. We have a great event tomorrow night with Patchy Mix and Cedric Doumbé. Man, I wish I was there. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm not. I'm doing some other stuff today, which is a lot less fun, but very important for me to do here in Northern Virginia for the next 3 days. Pete was in Saudi last week. I'll go to Saudi in 2 months for the next event. So to me, that's the second big difference we really try to divide and conquer that work depending on our relative strengths of what we're doing. Now, in terms of what's similar, all I do is work. I'll work some days as little as 10 hours, some days as much as 12 or 13, but it varies. Like everybody, I don't do this 11 hours every day, 12 hours, some 10 to 13 hours. And I work every day, including the weekends. So to me, a Sunday is no different than a Tuesday. If I want to take a break at 4 o'clock and go whether it's Tuesday or Sunday, it's the same thing. I treat all days the same. So to me, I have the same demanding schedule, but I tend to work what is meaningful to create value, and I just attack it 7 days a week.
Is that a gut feel experience from doing it for a while, or
Experience. The benefit for me being an older founder is I've seen this story of company build and value created or not dozens and dozens and dozens of times firsthand. And by the way, I also use not. I've invested with my partners in companies that have been promising and squandered it. I've invested in companies that we thought would be big winners, and they were big losers. I've invested in companies that surprised us on the upside. I've invested in things that we thought would go well, and they did. Whatever story exists in the entrepreneurial chapters of time, I've seen them. So, and I know what they feel like. I know what to avoid. I know what to try to repeat. And nothing is the same, but you can try to maximize your odds of success. And you can try to maximize the activities that help you succeed versus try to be patterns of failure.
Yeah, I like that. It's good. Just thinking through, I don't want to take us off when we would go for another 30 minutes. I try to keep them under 30, so we're right around there. I guess we'll finish on this. Any other trends across sports? We'll say sports, but we know that's broad because it can include a lot of different things. you're paying attention to are going to
Yeah.
impact not just PFL. Maybe you're thinking about it. Maybe you're seeing it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Saudi, that was a big talk a year ago. That's influenced and impacted you guys in a positive light, it seems, right? Anything else peripheral you're seeing here?
Yeah, I'll quickly name a handful because these will apply to, I think, a lot of people. Some more obvious than others. One, Netflix and Amazon have 25 times the cash flow of the traditional buyers of sports. 25 times the cash flow. The last 10 years, there were 9,000 scripted shows purchased by Netflix and Amazon. $30 billion spent on 9,000 scripted shows. That chapter's over. The next scripted show isn't going to get you more subs or retain more subs if you're Netflix and Amazon. The next 10 years are about live sports. So, yes, I've been saying this for a year, that the dribble will start, but then the flow will happen. And so when people talk about the great cable unbundling, or why are people still watching TV, or et cetera, there's only one reason. It's because live sports is still on TV. And only 5% of live sports is on Netflix or Amazon. 95% of live sports is still on TV. So when that changes, the world changes. And that's going to change. A little bit in 2025, a little bit more in 2026, but 2027, the flow is happening. And that's going to change everything. So that'd be point one. Point two is the globalization has just started. Saudi has just started. The sovereign wealth funds in the Far East just started. India and China are the two biggest populations in the world, and they don't have a second favorite sport. What? They only have a favorite sport. So you're telling me 40% of the world's population doesn't have a second favorite sport yet. So the globalization, as it impacts viewership, revenue, and the growth of teams or leagues, has got a whole nother turn. This could be very, very disruptive. And there's 156 sports teams in the Big Five if you add MLS to that. All the chatter in every podcast and every written thing is about the 156 teams. That's where I would not be investing, because those are all domestic. I'd be doing everything else. Remember Seinfeld? I'm doing the opposite. Costanza does the opposite. He gets a hot girlfriend, a promotion with the Yankees. He does the opposite. Global, global, global. That's
G&G.
where I would be.
G&G.
So those are the two trends that will disrupt everything and will create huge growth where people don't see it.
Last thing, because you touched on it, I can't go without bringing it up. Thoughts on private equity in two areas. Number one, youth sports. Number two, in buying minority stakes of professional teams.
Hey, that's you with balloons now. This is a winning discussion.
Winning everywhere.
All around.
It's all over.
All around. It's all over.
We just need we get one of these. I don't know. Thumbs up.
Well, I'm going to address private equity in sports more broadly, because I think that'd be more helpful. Private equity in sports right now is not really playing a helpful role. What do I mean by that? Private equity, first of all, is a big umbrella. It includes buyout firms and on one end and venture firms on the other. The only people that build companies are venture firms. They're people who understand businesses, take risk, help build. Private equity firms invest in things that have already been successful, that are already profitable. So private equity firms, with due respect, do not help anyone build anything. So right now, those are the people who are like 6th Street, who are really just securitizing Barcelona's 20-year media rights. That's not an investment in sports. That's a financial engineering task. So to me, most of private equity, they're treating sports as an asset class, which might as well be real estate, might as well be any type of debt instrument. So private equity as an asset class is not helping build one thing, just financial engineering. Venture, helping build sports, what David Blitzer's doing in youth sports, building. What Elysian Park is doing with the PGA and their venture on building. So to me, we need much more what early investors did in women's soccer with the NWLs, building. So to me, the people who invest in growing things, who then help make jobs and economic return and assets happen, we need more of. Those funds tend to be smaller, and those people tend to be fewer. I want to see more of that, and that would help everybody.
What I wanted to hear. I love it. Well, Don, good stuff. Appreciate you coming on. Know your head's down. Where can people reach out for PFL stuff? Whether it's tickets, whether it's they want a job, what's some of your contact emails? Contact at pfl.com. Where are good places? Because we're not going to push them to you.
Well, here's what I'm going to do, because Andrew, you're you. You're an entrepreneur yourself, so I respect that. People can email me at Donn Davis at PFLMMA.com. There you have it. And
sell to the world.
And there it is. No, I'm not going to give them a job. I'm going to give them to somebody who can interview them for a job. But here's what I'm going to give them. If they follow all of our accounts, I'm going to give them 2 tickets to any event they want this year on me. So if you follow PFL on Instagram, PFL MMA, you follow me on LinkedIn, Donn Davis on LinkedIn, and you email me, you're getting 2 tickets to any PFL event you want this year on me.
It's great marketing right there. I love it.
There
Good
you
stuff,
go.
Tom. Appreciate you coming on, and I might take you up on those tickets myself too. I might shoot a little email over and be like, "Yo, I'm here too. Don't forget about me."
And that's easy. And I don't know when you're dropping this, but everybody should watch the
next
Bellator,
Monday.
Yeah, the Bellator Champion Series is on Max all year. It's right next to the NBA and the NHL. It's only the 3rd sport on Max, and the Bellator Champion Series, very cool. And the PFL Series of Season 6 on ESPN Primetime or ESPN Plus all year. Both are in full swing. So either go to Max for the Bellator Series or go to ESPN for the PFL Global season.
Love it.